Good ownership is an absolute must in the world of football, and let's be honest, with our history, Leeds United know this as well as anybody. It's not been good for us. Thankfully, ought to know better have had a chat with Larry Nance Jr., who is part of the current ownership group at Leeds United, and found out a little bit more about him, his connection with Leeds United, and ultimately what his plans are in terms of his stake of ownership at Leeds United. And reportedly, Larry is locked in for life. So, I'm going to talk all about that in a couple of moments. But before I get started, I want to just sort of clear up a couple of bits and bobs. You need to watch the Ought to Know Better stream, like now. I'll link it down below. I'll also link the Ought to Know Better channel just so I'm sort of pointing people in the right direction. It's a really good stream, really fun. And I made sure that I made this video with their permission to use a couple of quotes from him, purely because it would feel a bit weird if I was just sort of like watching their stream and going, mine now. It's not. Basically, asked, made sure they were okay with it, and this video is a result of all that. So, to summarize, one of the better questions from this, genuinely a fantastic question, was what does Larry Nance want from his investment? Lots and lots of people for a good while have basically said, okay, so lots and lots of these sports stars are investing their money into Leeds United, but surely at some point they'll want their money out again, which means that in the long run we're basically being used for profit. And I really liked Larry's answer to this one. He effectively said that he never wants to see his money again. He wants to have invested the money into the club and just not have like a financial payout, not make a profit from it, not sort of use that money as leverage, because he really does seem like he's completely locked in. He's really caught that Leeds United bug, and I think that is absolutely huge. That is absolutely essential. I'll run into how that happened a little bit later on. But honestly, having this is the perfect mindset, because it means that it's not so transactional. Whereas if it was a case of, well, he's invested, I know this isn't going to be the number, but £100,000, he's going to say, well, in 3 years, if I'm at £130,000, I'll take that money out again. That'd be very, very daft for us to go for, purely because it means that sort of self-serving celebrities are able to hop in. It's not the case for Nance at the very least, and I doubt it's the case for a lot of the others, although he did say, I can't speak for the other investors, but that's fair enough. You're not really going to sort of put your own words in their mouths. In my opinion, I think the payout for Larry Nance Jr. is emotional. It's connection driven. And the sort of early questions discussed the reasons that he invested in Leeds United, and that included the fact that sort of he'd wanted to get involved in the ownership side of football for a little while beforehand, because he is a lover of football and was seen amongst sort of his social group and his friends as someone that like was really knowledgeable in terms of football stuff. And this opportunity popped up. And it's not just a case of Leeds were the first opportunity and he just jumped at it. It's a case of he was also apparently offered stakes in like Bournemouth, for example, and just said no, he didn't really want to do that because the project didn't suit him. So Leeds United came along and he sort of looked at it and went, okay, I really like the culture around this club. I really like what's sort of going on with the fans. I really like the ground. I really like sort of how everything feels. And then he invested. And that tells me that he's not just here for the financial thing, because if he was, I feel like you probably don't invest in a club that's in the Championship, or you probably pull out your investment when the club falls into the Championship. Instead, you probably go for a Bournemouth or something like that, something that's fairly safe and reliable. Him not choosing to do that is really telling of something nice and promising for me, in my opinion, at the very least. Next up, he was asked, what sort of information do investors get? So obviously, being an investor, you're going to be on the inside of a lot of conversations that a lot of standard fans aren't. Transfer market is the perfect example. Us fans are sort of on the outside looking in, picking up on little snippets and reports and bits and bobs that whatever we see, we can try and talk about, but we don't have that behind the scenes information that the likes of a Nance do. But apparently the information that investors get varies quite significantly. Hello, Iris. Apologies, the cat's walked in. So, according to Nance in the interview, he said that he himself is fairly highly informed because he actively involves himself. He will be asking questions. Specifically, he said that sometimes he'll send news articles to people that are on the board or taking significant roles at the club, because he does like to involve himself a lot. He likes to know what's going on behind the scenes. And this means sort of chasing down the answers rather than just getting them in a release from time to time. A different question was sort of along the lines of, so fans will find something out on one day. How much earlier than that will you, as an investor, find out what's going on? And he said that he finds out the big stories 2 to 3 days early. So I'm assuming this is in the event that like we know that the stories are done. So it's not going to be stuff that is like deadline day transfers that are agreed on deadline day and stuff like that. But as a general rule of thumb, 2 to 3 days, which makes sense because it means that he's in a position to sort of go, okay, I'll think this out, think what I want to do on my social media side, and work from there. Fairly standard, but yeah, it's also quite indicative of what's happening behind the scenes at Leeds because it's showing that we're a little bit more organised. It's not just a case of get a deal done, announce it. It's a case of get a deal done. Okay, so we're going to embargo the information until this point. We're going to announce it through this means. Investors, you can do whatever you want, but do it at this point. It sort of shows a level of organisation that I feel like we didn't have under the previous ownership. Specific example that he brought up was he said, we're signing this 20-goal player from Swansea and I can't tell anyone, which is kind of fun. I like the idea that like even during this podcast, Larry was sort of like, we're announcing a move in 2 days and I can't tell you. That'd be great. He was also specifically asked a little bit about the kit, and he said that he's heard some details on the kit and he really likes what he's heard, but he can't go into more detail. I think these are likely to be similar to the details that everyone else has heard floating around, and I might do a video on that maybe tomorrow if there's no real news, but definitely at some point soon. But from what he seems to have heard, I think what the general rumours are fairly accurate. You also got a little bit of a vibe with Larry Nance from this entire thing. Larry Nance Jr., sorry. His dad, also an NBA player, also won I think, a slam dunk competition in the NBA, which was great fun. But from what I can tell from this interview and from generally like him around the club, knowing people that have met him, having met him myself down at Wembley, he genuinely seems like he's a great guy. Not only that, but he's very, very willing to get involved. So, for example, down at Wembley, he was taking pictures with everyone, but not only that, having like genuine heart-to-heart conversations about people, not about people, with people, sorry, about stuff like issues that like their kids were having and stuff like that. Not going to go into details just because like for his privacy and like whoever was talking to him's privacy, but sort of getting involved with fans and having those conversations in the first place isn't something that you would expect from an investor in a football club, which is really nice to see, in my opinion. In addition to that, in the interview, he gradually learned that it isn't Manchester United, it is Scum or Scumchester, which is absolutely fantastic. Big fan of that, and it shows that he's happy to dive right on into the club culture. And I'll be honest, even being on the pod shows his love of the club. Yeah, sure, if you want to take a very cynical approach, you can say, oh, it's just a PR move, but what's the point of PR for him at this point? He could do what a Spieth or a Ferrell are doing and be invested in the club and sort of sit back a little bit and just sort of say, yeah, I'm just going to watch the results on the pitch, not be too active, not really talk to the fans. Occasionally I'll show up at Elland Road, but I'm not going to really mingle that much. I think Nance showing up on this podcast and at the Peacock and at the pub before the Wembley match sort of shows that he would love to be a big part of like the Leeds fan base. And I really like that. It shows a sort of sincerity that you don't often get from an owner. And ultimately, I think he is the perfect person to have investing in Leeds United at the moment. First up, he is happy to discuss ownership from a sporting perspective. He comes from a sports background. His dad was in basketball. He is in basketball. So he can sort of understand ownership from the perspective of a player and now an owner. He talked a lot about how players must be feeling in certain situations, including after the playoff final, which is another little bit of insight that I think is really useful, not only to have like in conversations with fans, but on the board. He also makes the owners group significantly more relatable because he is actively trying to relate to the fans, which is something really rare that you don't often see very much. And it means that you're putting a passionate voice at the top. All too often, you will get an owner that has come in thinking, I want to own a football club, but they won't necessarily care about which football club or the culture of that football club or the way that that football club has been in the past. Whereas Larry Nance Jr. picked out Leeds and looked at absolutely everything and is spending his time talking to people, which means that up at the top, up at sort of the ownership, although not the board level, but sort of the sub-owner level, you've got those voices that care about the club. It's the same case for, I think, Russell Crowe is invested, and that family of billionaires that I can never remember the name of. Is it the Lowies? Something like that? I don't know. But you've got voices that care about the club at the top now, not just Andrea Radrizzani looking at the championship going, do any clubs here have the potential to get promoted? Seeing Leeds investing and well done, you've made a profit. But that doesn't feel like it's what's happening this time. He's also enthusiastic in all the right ways, all the ways you could possibly ask for. And hopefully the Red Bull influence in the club that is potentially growing doesn't lessen these voices. Hopefully it stays Leeds. It stays with the investors that care about Leeds being Leeds, and we're all good for years to come. Either way, I do want to know what you think. Ideally, go and watch the Ought to Know Better stream, podcast, whatever you want to call it, immediately after this. That'd be really, really nice. But yeah, let me know what you think about Larry Nance Jr. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe. Do hope you enjoyed. If you did, you could even become a channel member. All that money is still going towards Prostate Cancer UK, building up to that big walk at the start of August. And yeah, I will see you later. Tell you what, with the right ownership, I think we're going up. We're getting promoted. That can be the word that, if you've gotten this far in the video, just pop in the comments the word up. That'd be massively appreciated. Thank you. Ta-ra.